Welcome to STEM Differentiation. We are excited that you're joining the STEM Connection today. We are going through one of our STEM educator empowerment modules in our series for the 2022-2023 year. And STEM Differentiation is a space that Angela and I both, who I'm presenting with today, really feel is an important place to spend some time. When we think about STEM education, we think about the importance of it today, and we think about the youth that we serve when we are offering opportunities for them and how we can come alongside them in their learning experience. That being able to differentiate a really extremely challenging topic in a way that it's going to make it clear and concise and meaningful to a student is our focus when we think about differentiation. Angela and I have been working in the STEM fields for a period of time, and we've known each other for a period of time as well, worked together in some different capacities, are really excited to share some ideas about breaking down that idea of STEM differentiation. It can be a challenging one to jump into, so we're glad we can come alongside you and share some of the pieces we've learned along the way. And then also love to hear from you how you have differentiated for STEM meaning and impact and mastery when you work with young people. We are both a part of the STEM Connection, and the STEM Connection really focuses on that educating and empowering children and adults in those principles of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, through those hands-on and best practices. That's really what we're about. I'm going to show you a short video just to kind of help you understand what that looks like.
When a child has the opportunity to be in the experience, to be the finder and the doer and the creator, to learn at their speed and in the best way for them, that's when real meaning happens, when mastery occurs. How can we create those experiences that break down barriers for all children and allow us to come alongside that child young, and then as they move into the next stages of life? That is really where the power is. We are at the STEM Connection, located at Moore Road Farm here in Indianapolis. We run programming that excites young people about the future. We try to make STEM come alive for them.
One thing that I love about STEM Connection the most is that it answers the question that I get asked all the time. When are we going to use this in real life? I'm a math teacher, and so that's the question that I get constantly from my kids. At the STEM Connection, you find out where you can use these things in real life, and you find out that there's so many different opportunities.
You know, if we can have a child feel like, I'm a scientist, I'm a technician, I'm an engineer, I'm a mathematician, even very young, it's going to stay with them. Yeah. We have 6 programming opportunities. We have field trips that run year-round, day camps. In the summer, we run weeks of camp.
One of the favorite things that the kids have is to go down to the creek. They love creek stomping and finding all these bugs and things that are down there. You never really look for those. You're more just like playing in the water. But then we would be flipping over rocks and like collecting bugs. And there's like so many different things down there.
We have a program called STEM Quick Wins. This is a video resource that has a short activity sheet with it. We also have STEM family kits, and they allow us to connect with children that may not have the resources to do those quick STEM activities at home. It has a literature connection, and it has materials for more than just one child to do the program. And in addition, we have a program called STEM Future Leaders. This is for our middle school, high school students, and they get a chance to delve more into the leadership space, connect with STEM professionals, find ways to make a difference, and really connect to the next stage of where they're going.
I'm Jeremiah, and he's James. I want to be an artist or an animator. I want to be a scientist/engineer.
My boys are 11 and a half because apparently the half counts. They've done STEM camps, and now that they are in middle school, they're part of the STEM Future Leader Program. So it's just been several great opportunities to connect with science, technology, engineering, and math over the course of the majority of their life, actually. They're super responsive to students' needs. And I think what's great about that is now I can see my boys explaining concepts to younger kids. And if you can explain to someone else, that means you really have internalized that knowledge. The STEM connection is open to all families. And when I say diversity, I don't mean just racially. I mean, there's focus on underrepresented groups, such as girls getting into STEM, kids of all abilities, students with different sensory needs, cognitive abilities, coming to a place like this where they get to see all different kinds of people and learning how to work together. I think that's going to benefit them greatly in the future.
I want to trust young people that they know sometimes more than we do about how to learn and how to look at something differently. They're the future, right? They're the innovators now. They're the ones that are going to solve the big problems. So if we're just planting those seeds and setting up moments for them, that's really where I see the power.
So now you've heard more about our programs and you had a chance to visually see them through the video clip. And it's kind of fun to think how all these programs connect, because we're with you today in that professional development, but we have those other programs where we're serving youth in our space or in other opportunities. And that helps us with that differentiation piece because we're seeing it happen in the work we're doing on a daily basis. Love pictures. They really help us tell our story. They help us think about how we want STEM to look from that differentiation lens to that content lens, to the process lens. You know, what is it supposed to be? It's the picture that kind of shows that sometimes. That's sometimes the best product when we're teaching STEM. It helps us really know how we're moving forward with that learning experience. I wish I could measure smiles as a way to see how I'm doing as an educator. That's not really so easy, but it's a great way to help you see how that work looks. And we're hoping today when you leave that some of this will help you go back and think about that differentiation lens in a way that helps you move that mastery and learning forward for the youth you're working with. And in addition, maybe makes you smile and maybe makes them smile as well. I'm going to let Angela take it a little bit now and kind of delve in more into that STEM space as we gear up to think about that in relationship to differentiation.
Thanks, Spirit. Yeah, I love seeing the pictures as well, the pictures and the videos and just kind of those programs in action, and thinking about those opportunities that we've provided in the past and then thinking about those that we're planning for and we're getting ready to have as we're looking forward a little bit. And when we set out to kind of create activities and opportunities for kiddos and kind of some different experiences for them, really we strive to bring together the various disciplines of STEM into kind of, cohesive and encompassing activities and opportunities. So, we know that STEM has these different disciplines of the science, the technology, the engineering, and the math, but how can we work to kind of provide experiences that have components of each of those all kind of embedded in there, for a child to have a true kind of STEM experience. And the way we do that is by thinking about our STEM practices. And as we think about, what a scientist is and what a scientist does, or what a mathematician is, or what they do, we kind of think about those actions and those things that they are doing and trying to have opportunities for youth to be able to do those same actions, right? So when we're thinking about an experience, we kind of think about, the STEM piece, right? That science, technology, engineering, math. But then we also think, how is that going to look? What sorts of things will the kids be doing? The youth have an opportunity to try kind of within these different areas. So this by no means is an all-encompassing list of STEM practices, but it helps us just kind of hone in and think about when we are kind of planning or setting up experiences for kids, how can we be intentional about having those different components in each of these different disciplines be represented in some way. One other tool that we use as kind of a backbone to our program when we're setting things up and kind of in the planning stage is thinking about how we can help prepare kids for the future, right? Whatever that future might look like, if they're really young, their future in academics, if they're getting a little bit older, their future is they're thinking about joining the workforce and then just being citizens of the world, right? And being able to function and do the things that they need to do in order to be successful. So here in Indiana, they're called the employability skills standards, but elsewhere, kind of more generally, you may see these as the 21st century skills. So always thinking about trying to sprinkle these in those experiences we're providing as well. So thinking about the different mindsets and social emotional skills, work ethics, and learning strategies that can help kind of round out that experience for a kiddo and help prepare them for the future. So we reference this a little bit with our staff as well, and kind of think about in the current work that we're doing, what skill here might be something that's on top of mind or that we're kind of utilizing in the work that we're doing. For me, I think collaboration is one that kind of comes to mind right now, is working with different program specialists and facilitators to really start to plan and prepare for some of the programming we have coming up, and making sure that everyone is feeling comfortable and confident in what they're being asked to do, and that they're able to do that successfully. So that's one that kind of sticks with me. And as I kind of pass it back over to Vera to delve into the differentiation bit a little bit, is there one of these employability skills, Vera, that you're kind of connecting with today, or that's a little bit more top of mind for you?
I think that connection, and I think really when we jump into differentiation, wanting to think about connection before content. So that importance of, if I'm working with adults or working with children, taking time to connect and feel as though that person is being seen. If they're adult or a child, they need to feel seen, and they need to feel safe, and they need to feel as though they belong. So making time for that, it's easy sometimes not to want to spend a lot of time there because there's content I got to get to. And I want to remind myself that really is the most important. If I haven't made that connection, then I'm not going to get anything done, whatever that looks like. So that one's kind of resonating with me today. And thank you for asking. And that connection piece, Angela, kind of goes into that next slide, because if we're thinking of connection before content, that idea that I need to think about that individual or group and their needs, I need to connect with them to be able to do that before I can even think about that differentiation. I have to have that knowledge of where they're coming from in some capacity. I may not have their whole story. I may not know where every child is today or where they were yesterday, but I hopefully have a little bit of a feel of what I'm jumping into, a little bit of knowledge, from reading the situation, having worked with them possibly before, maybe not, depending on the program or classroom setting, and wanting to go, okay, what do I know? What's the connection I can make with them so I can move into that content? Because once I think about that differentiation, I know I have that content piece. I can also think about, what can I possibly use to help me deliver that content so that child moves forward with their learning. In a way, we want them to be moving forward in that learning continuum. They may not hit mastery that moment in time, in that experience that I'm helping put together or facilitating, but we want that movement forward where you're seeing something happen. Those magic moments of learning are occurring, and they're moving forward to knowing more about this content that's been identified as what's important. So the content kind of starts off where I'm going. Then I'm thinking about the process, I'm thinking about the product, and I'm thinking about the environment, and thinking how these four all work together to help me be able to differentiate a lesson. I really like how this is broken out and how we're going to kind of jump through these a little bit, because what I think is, if I had known some of this when I first started teaching, it would have really helped set me up for success, especially when I realized in my first classroom experience that I had 27 kiddos all coming from different spaces and places. And it might have helped me think about that content that I was being asked to deliver to them. And then also not what I was asked to deliver to them, but how that child was going to be able to access the information. So what do they need to know? What do I have to deliver? What are the standards or the pieces that have been identified as what's important? And then how am I going to let them access that information? I think those two things are so clear and kind to me as I think about teaching. I really like standards because they help me focus. I like so much in the world around me. I'm really interested in learning about STEM, and I could go in many directions when I think about what I would want to teach a young person. But if I have the focus of what it needs to be, then it lets me think about that access. So when we think about that content, that standard that's been identified is where I'm going to go, then I can think about how are they going to access that information, and how can I possibly have multiple ways they're going to access the information, because not every child's the same. That's where the differentiation comes. If I can set it up where they're accessing information in multiple ways, I'm hoping then that all of the students that I'm working with, all of the children in my program are going to interact with that content in some capacity. So thinking about content and how can I deliver this or give them access to information in multiple ways? I like this visual because it lets me start to think about that. What am I currently doing? And is there a way I could add another piece in that might help them move forward? You know, if it is a level text, what else can I bring in to kind of segment that or augment that or make that experience more meaningful so more children can access? So even if I could have all of these areas coming off of that content middle, it lets me start to think about what could I add in a way that might not be a huge lift for me, but also extends that opportunity for access. So the thinking about the content piece in that lens, and then thinking about how can I bring that content in ways that I may not have thought of before. Are there, again, little lifts that I could start to shift in my learning experience, knowing that I have a varied classroom setting that I'm working with. I have this content. The content doesn't vary. I mean, that's the one thing that's consistent when I'm teaching something, but I know that all the children I'm working with are coming from different spaces. So Angela and I both really love the literature links. And one of the reasons we love them is because of this, because it helps break down barriers. It helps us be able to level that playing field for different learners, depending on where they are. It even helps educators as well. You know, I may know a lot about light. I might think light's amazing, and I might have taken classes to learn more about, different types of radio waves and electric light. I might have studied energy and thought in that space a lot. I'm really interested in that. I might have studied all the stars in some capacity, but when I'm taking other information here, I may not know as much. So how am I going to help myself as an educator? I think one of the ways I love the STEM differentiation, thinking about the literature links, it helps me as well. But Angela, how about you when you've been working with students? Is there a book here that you feel has really helped you with that differentiation space, and especially when you're thinking about different learners in a situation?
Yeah. So, and this is a great thing. I mean, and also if you're in the out of school time setting, maybe you're not trained and specialized in, the STEM or the science piece, books are a great way to cover that content piece for you. And so I think that is awesome. I know one of the books on here, I love this kind of first series, the Let's Read and Find Out Science series, because they do have these different level texts. And I know we have used the My Five Senses. I know, we have a number of those books in our own library. And what's great is, you can start off My Five Senses. It's very basic. It's just really thinking about, how humans interact with the world. But then from there is kind of a starting point. There's so many other pieces of literature or ways to kind of delve deeper into that information, having books on like each of the specific senses, or thinking about how, the nervous system works. So it's kind of just a starting point. So I know that, that My Five Senses is one that kind of comes to mind that I know we've used in our programming. And then also we have some other books, on the same topic that are more appropriate for some of our older kids that we work with as well.
Thank you for sharing that. And I've seen teachers and other educators or facilitators where they've pulled books in that leveled format. So, they'll have a couple out from that 1, that 2, that 3, and they'll look at the lexile and think about how can I have those varied opportunities just out and about. It doesn't have to be considered an assignment. It might just be on desks in the morning when they come in, or, after a lunch break, in an out of school time experience where they just have books out and they're just an invitation for learning. There's not any clear defined lesson around them. They're just a piece that is there for that child to explore and look at and engage in some capacity. And I love having those gentle little entries into learning that aren't so formal. They can really supplement that more formal experience. And you're not really sure who it's going to always connect with. It may not be the students or children you think that are going to be drawn to those books. And I love when I see that kind of, oh my, they really spent that time there. I've also seen children or young people seek that when they want to kind of regulate, they need another change of experience. They know they need to pull back from maybe something that's getting too crazy or wild in a learning experience. And I love having that as an option where it just becomes that piece that helps them differentiate what they need. Because really, we know young people a lot of times know how they learn best in some ways. They may not be able to articulate that, but they might be more visual. And maybe they just really need to look at the pictures to help them connect that information. So I love having that as some way of making that happen. So we know the content. We can think about how that child's going to access that content. And then we can think about that process piece. So when we think about those 4 areas that we can differentiate, I can differentiate how that content can be shared out and how they can find it or interact with it, right? And now I'm thinking about how can they really engage with it? How can I set them up for an experience where they can start to move towards that information, making sense of it, and moving toward that mastery? What is it that I can, in some ways, give them opportunity to engage with that content and help them kind of find their way through? Again, I might be doing one of these already with the students I'm working with or the young people, but what if I was able to add something else in? Is there a way, again, for you as that educator or facilitator, a way for you to shift it a little, a way for you to go, I can add a little bit of something. I like the centers and stations. I think that way is, again, an opportunity for them to explore in a space and go there when they're ready. I also like thinking about those multiple intelligences. Is there a way for them to kind of pull in that kinesthetic piece? Is there a way for them, again, with that visual piece? Do I have some visuals to help them, handle that content that might have a lot of vocab? What can I do to add in another piece of that puzzle from that processing thought process? From the processing thought process. That's a really long one, but I'm thinking in that way. I'm thinking, how can I process the processing? I love the multiple intelligence, like I was saying. It gives me that ability to think about that content and how can I think about the young person knowing that they may be coming from one of these spaces. How can I vary it to differentiate for them? How can I help them access it and then also engage with it? I'm thinking about the content and how I can have them really find a way to connect with it and make it their own. And sometimes they may have an idea about it. So that idea of youth voice, when we know we're going to be studying something, what are some ways we can kind of work with that information? And even having them help you find that, I think, is a really powerful piece of the puzzle. So trying to find ways for them to kind of engage. I saw the KWL chart as one of the ways we can kind of think about that. Sometimes sharing in that space can trigger ways for you to be able to pull in those different multiple intelligences. When you know a little bit what they are, where they are, when you know what they're kind of wondering about, and then that thinking about that learning piece, where are they in that KWL, and how can you come into that space with them as they're trying to move through that learning? I just love thinking about these because it makes me excited to go, how can I take that content and shift it up? I'm going to let Angela share a little bit more about that next piece of these 4 areas that we can tweak to help that child move forward with content.
Yeah, and I think thinking about the multiple intelligences is a great kind of a segue from process to products, because those same multiple intelligences, right, where we're thinking about how students are engaging with content and information and processing that and working with it, to how they then demonstrate their knowledge or their understanding, or how they show what it is they know, or how they've grown in a particular area. Those multiple intelligences can be we can go back to those as well when we get to this product stage, and how students are able to show or tell or demonstrate their knowledge and learning. So again, just thinking about, there's a number of ways that this happens kind of organically in a classroom setting or in an out of school time setting. But sometimes we might want to kind of change it up and give kids some opportunities to show or demonstrate what they know in some different ways. So yes, our formal and informal assessments and those formative and summative assessments are great, and they have definitely their place and are one tool that we can use. But here, just giving some other ideas about ways that students can show what they know as well. And especially for us, we're coming from, an informal learning space, the out of school time learning space. So we have to sometimes get creative to really see, have the kids we're working with connected with this content? Are they, understanding a little bit more about it? What more do they know? So we have to kind of think about some of those different ways that they can show or tell us what it is that they know. So just some different ideas, just thinking about, how they might be able to do that verbally or orally, or create some sort of product or prototype to show you, or create some sort of video or commercial to show it. It could kind of engage them in different ways and allow them to kind of really thrive and kind of shine in their different areas. And when we're thinking about those products, right, a lot of the STEM activities that we do create engaging the students in either the scientific process or the engineering design process, where they're going through these steps of a process, right, as they're kind of engaging with that content, and then coming up with some sort of, conclusion or information or data or some sort of product that they've designed or created. And a go-to for us when we're thinking about differentiation in this way is to think about the different criteria and constraints for those products, or what it is that they are generating or creating or showing us that they've done. So when we think about criteria, those are those requirements that kind of need to be demonstrated, right? So we have this example here, and we'll loop back to this activity in a few minutes as well. But in this activity, right, the kids are building towers, right? So for our requirements, we can change that up and vary our requirements to kind of make it more challenging, or to simplify it for the kids that we're working with, right? Maybe we're working with a variety of ages, and we want to be able to make it appropriate and appealing, all the way from a kindergartner to a 5th grader. How can we do that, right? So by changing up some of those requirements or things that need to be done, can make that can add some differentiation, as well as thinking about those constraints or the limitations, right? And sometimes those limitations and constraints are logistical or safety considerations, given your place in space and the setting that you have. And sometimes they can be added in as that component of an additional challenge, or to kind of make things a little bit more simplified for the kiddos. So this is an area that for us has been kind of a go-to, and thinking about how we can vary the criteria and constraints to kind of meet the needs or the ability levels of the youth that we're working with. And then thinking to that final area, kind of, we had those 4 blocks at the beginning. The fourth area to consider for some differentiation ideas would be the actual environment, the setting that you are in and how that space kind of is set up and how it feels for those kids that are with you in that space. So just thinking about, the physical way that the room is set up. Sometimes, you may be presenting your STEM activities in a classroom setting. So what are the challenges there and how things are kind of physically set up, and what do you have that you can kind of work to your advantage? Sometimes if you're working in an out of school time program, maybe you're set up in a cafeteria or a library, and you have to kind of think about what are the limitations physically in this space, and how can I make this space work for what we need to do and work for the needs of the kiddos that we're working with. Having those expectations and some norms kind of established for the workspace. Again, we do a lot of our work outdoors, so that can add kind of some varying levels of challenges or excitement, and just kind of starting off the time by establishing some, clear expectations and some procedures for that work time will hopefully set you up, and you can make those again as involved or as many as you need. We found that like 3 norms, like 3 quick and clear kind of expectations, things that we're all going to be doing, keeps it pretty easy for particularly our younger friends. And then it can become a little bit more detailed and involved with the older, the older the kids that you're working with. And then also to think about just the different spaces that you might be able to utilize outside, your maybe one kind of assigned place. Are there other common areas or general spaces that you might be able to utilize to change things up or to provide access to information? So utilizing library or the media center or the gym, maybe even going outside, finding a green space that can be used. That can change up activities and allow for some differentiation just by kind of changing up the setting itself. So here's just some examples of the different places and spaces that we've utilized for some of our programming, and how we have to kind of think about it a little bit more creatively sometimes, or, think about what's going to be appropriate for some different age levels, or given the space that we have, how we can set it up to help it be successful for us as teachers and facilitators, and also for those kids that are engaging with the activities and the content. So just some examples. We love our tables that are, that can roll and can move, and we can have chairs or not have chairs, and just have that flexibility is great, is something that we have found to be very helpful in our world. And then these are just a few more ideas. Again, we work in this kind of more informal space, out of school time space, with field trips and camps and some of those types of experiences. So just kind of putting together another kind of brainstorm list of ideas of how we have found some ways to differentiate activities, both for, to be helpful for our facilitators as they are working with different age levels and ability levels and capabilities and all that, learning styles, and bringing that all together. So just thinking about, how we're setting up our space and how we're facilitating and sharing information to the literature that we might be using. That's been a great resource for our facilitators. As we mentioned, if they're not a science specialist or STEM specialist, how do they have access to that content that is accurate, right? And that can break that barrier for the materials you're using. Again, we've talked about those criteria and constraints. I love this idea of this data collection and analysis. That's another piece, and especially bringing in that math connection and bringing that in, how are youth collecting data, right? Can they tally something? Can they count something? Can they measure something? And then what are we doing with that information? How are we representing that? Can we graph that in some way or have a visual representation? How can we help find some trends or patterns in that? How can we find, use some of that information to find averages and that sort of thing? So lots that can be done, kind of making those connections to math and how we kind of think about some of the data that we have, the timing for things. And then we like to use a tool called Show What You Know. So instead of calling it a pre-test or a post-test, just simply finding ways through reflection or through journaling or through questioning where we can gauge kind of where the youth are kind of at the beginning of our time together and kind of where they may end up at the end of our time together. So quick questions and reflection time and questions can be a great time to learn more about the kids and also gather some of that information in less formal ways. And then, like I said, we were going to look back to an activity and then kind of think about it, kind of give an example of if this was the activity, how might we be able to do some differentiation with that? So Vera's going to kind of set us up and share more about the activity, and then we'll kind of break it down and think about the ways we can differentiate it.
Thank you, Angela. So we always love to give you something you can take back with you and somehow use right away. So this is a free resource. It's called STEM Quick Wins, and you're going to see the QR code right on the screen right now. This code will take you to our library where there's many more STEM Quick Wins. And also it's a free resource. So it has an activity sheet, and in addition, it has a video that introduces that activity and makes it come alive. So you can show that to your children that you're working with, your students, young people. You can use it to kind of know even how to run the activity yourself. So it can be used many ways. We love our STEM Quick Wins. They introduce a STEM experience, and all these STEM experiences can be differentiated when you think about those pieces that Angela and I have been sharing about. When you think about the content, when you think about that process, when you think about the product, and you think about the environment. And I hope you get a chance to use them yourself because they make me smile and they're very useful. And I think they're going to be a piece that's going to help you think about that differentiation as you go back into the classroom or into the learning environment that you're in when you're working with young people. And this one here is toothpick towers. We have seen this differentiated from pre-K all the way up to adults. It's very interesting to watch even as we work with younger and older students in this space, how they go ahead and differentiate it. They will ask for materials possibly, or to change pieces themselves of the activity that will help engage them and kind of push them possibly into their next learning experience. And I think that's one thing I've gotten better over time is listening to the children that I'm working with, not always feeling as though I have to know it all, but really listening to see where they want to go. They might be doing it one way, and all of a sudden they have this new idea and they just need this one material, and all they are asking you for is the material. And you want to kind of maybe know why they want to use the material, because maybe that will help you learn more too. But being able to say yes as much as possible in this type of experience helps that differentiation happen even more from that youth side of it. So I'm going to show you this clip. I hope you like it, and we'll get started.
Hey, I'm Asher. Hey, I'm Callum.
Today's STEM Quick Win is toothpick towers.
Let's get started.
Today's STEM Quick Win is sponsored by PPG. Thanks for your support, and let's get started. A tower is a structure that is taller than it is wide. Towers can look different ways and be made of many different materials. Like today's towers are going to be made out of toothpicks and Play-Doh. For more information on towers and the content behind today's STEM Quick Win, check out our activity sheet linked below.
Step 1, look at the pictures of famous towers around the world. What do you notice? How are they similar? How are they different?
Step 2, use the Play-Doh and toothpicks to design and create a tower that is freestanding and fits on the paper plate.
Step 3. When your tower is constructed, measure the height and width of the tower to show that it is taller than it is wide.
Step 4. Discuss what you can do to improve the tower to make it taller or sturdier.
That's all for today's STEM Quick Win.
Thanks for watching.
See you next time.
Bye.
We'd love to see how tall of a tower we were able to create, so please share it with us online. Thanks again to PPG for sponsoring today's STEM Quick Win.
So that idea of here it is, and now you take it and you can create. Our STEM Quick Wins have this activity sheet linked to them, and that is in English and Spanish. So again, trying to really remove those barriers, make it very accessible to whoever's working with that young person. And when we think about those toothpick towers, and we go back to where we started with that idea of content, process, product, and environment, and these are the pieces that allow me to differentiate. Oftentimes that content piece, I have to really think about where that student is. And, when you think about the content that's put forth in standards, it's set forth. So with my younger students, it's going to look one way. But what happens is it's like a spiral staircase. So it's going to kind of move up, and then the next grade is going to maybe take it a little further, and the next grade and the next grade. So that content can switch a little bit in that space, but it'll always maybe be about towers, right? And then depending on the age group, I need to help the young people that I'm working with move through that material to mastery within that age space. So I can kind of identify the content, but I might have friends within that learning experience that are ready to go further. They're ready to take it a little bit more. I may have also friends that need me to pull back a little bit. Maybe they really need to even understand what a tower is. Maybe they've never seen a tower. How am I going to ask them to create one if they have no reference point, if they don't have that background knowledge? So I've got to be aware of where I need to be from that standard space, but I got to be able to go up and down in some capacity and think about how I can do that from that content space. So I like laying them out here, how we could tweak all these different things within the content area. In that process space, I can also think a little bit about how am I going to engage them with that information. So I find out they really aren't sure what a tower is. How am I going to help them have enough understanding, enough background knowledge to even create a tower? What's that going to look like? Will I have model towers? Will I have some books, maybe a video? Can I help them also then, once they're moving through it, really engage in that engineering design process and help them understand what stage they're in? How can I help them collect data if they're not really comfortable, maybe using a ruler? Maybe I do a little bit ahead with the ruler to help them feel more comfortable. Maybe I use a different kind of ruler that has less increments depending on the age. So I can kind of play around with those pieces to really deliver still the content that I need to deliver, but I'm thinking about that engagement, and I want that engagement to be successful so that I can move them forward in that learning experience. Angela, as far as product and environment, can you share those in relationship to the toothpick towers?
Sure. As we were thinking about those, and we would kind of, saw some other examples too, but even in the video, just thinking about those criteria and constraints, right? The ones that were presented in the video were it was basically how tall of a tower that is freestanding, right? So one of the criteria is that it had to be freestanding. It couldn't be attached to a wall or the floor in some way. It had to kind of stand on its own weight. So just thinking about those different criteria and constraints, and here's some ideas. The materials, right? What about if you used craft sticks instead of toothpicks, right? Or gave them that choice? Like there's maybe some different criteria or constraints that can be built in there. Putting a height, like an actual value to that is 8 inches tall or 20 centimeters tall, or, having that, or at least that amount, right? And then how can they kind of prove that? And in this example, it's on the paper plate, right? That's a criteria. It has to be kind of within that placement. Those constraints, the types of materials they use, or how much of a material they can or can't use, the time. Another way to kind of differentiate this activity up a level and to get some higher level thinking, and this is a great way for a lot of challenges like this, is bringing in a budget component and thinking about, okay, we have these certain materials. as a facilitator or teacher, you can assign, each toothpick, it costs you 10 cents of this pretend money. And, you have a full budget of $5 and they have to kind of do that extra step of planning and bringing in some of those math pieces as well. It definitely kind of stretches that up and lets them think more like architects and engineers and people that are contracted to construct things, that they would have some of these constraints in the real world. That opportunity for improvement, right? Maybe you have some students that work through this challenge pretty quickly and are able to have some success right away. Well, is there something you can do to challenge them a little bit further, but still improve? Can you create something of the same height using fewer toothpicks or using less Play-Doh, right? Or if maybe students are struggling, how can they get some support that they need to help everyone in the room be successful? And I think that also kind of lends itself to the environment and thinking about, this challenge could be trickier if you're working on your own, particularly for younger students. So, finding a grouping that's going to work, are they going to work independently or with a partner? How might that change kind of the level or the difficulty? When and how they can get help and who can provide help is another way to kind of think about the environment and how you can change things up. And then where the work is happening. I was just thinking about this being done. I remember doing this one time at a school, and the room we were in had desks that were angled. So, that just added its own challenge, right? Like that could be something we add in. What if you were building this on a hill? How would that change it? Or if you're, wanting to simplify it, maybe we build on the floor instead of on the angled desks first, and then we go up to that next one. So just kind of thinking about your environment and the facilities that you have and the, resources you have, and how might that impact how challenging something might be, or how it can be simplified. And then with us thinking the inside versus outside, any of these kind of construction activities are interesting to think about. If you take them outside and have some different factors that are a little more out of your control, how might that change up the learning a little bit? So and some of these tower challenges are fun to just change up the environment. So that's just, and we're not saying by any means would you do all of these things with every single lesson that you have, but hopefully we're just planting some seeds and giving you some ideas of some options for you when the youth that you're working with, and how, which area you may have to spend a little bit of time thinking about to help all of those kids be successful that you're working with. Because it could be overwhelming to do all of this with every single one. So kind of pick and choose, think about where you are and what might be most helpful right now with the kids that you're working with. And then as always, just in our time together, there's no way for us to really, delve really deeply into this. But if there's something that was presented today that you're curious about or want to know a little bit more about, or is connecting with you and kind of the situation you're in right now, here are a few of the resources that we have used to put together the content of today's webinar. So hopefully if there's something, and this is a place to start to learn a little bit more about whether that's just, differentiation in the STEM classroom, some of those different mindsets or multiple intelligences. Here are some resources to help kind of help you continue on. And then we mentioned those STEM, that literature as a way for differentiation. So here are some of those series that we presented earlier in the presentation, the Let's Read and Find Out Science books. There are lists here kind of by theme, the Cat in the Hat library, the Step into Reading, and then a few other resources that have lists and things kind of divided and leveled that you could utilize to kind of thinking about the youth that you're working with or teaching, and what could be appropriate for them and how you can use those different sources. And then finally, we thank you for joining us today and spending some of your day with us. Here are just some other opportunities for you to continue to connect with us, or other opportunities and resources we have for you. Again, those STEM quick wins, that library of activities, future educator empowerment PD, and then to get the most recent and kind of up-to-date information, connecting with us via social media. We'd love to connect with you in that way as well. So again, thank you so much for joining us. If you have any other further questions, feel free to reach out to me. Here's my contact information, along with our website and ways to connect with us via social media and our website. So thank you for joining us, and we hope to connect with you again soon.